Okay, so are you ready to dive into something different today?
Always up for a challenge. What do we got?
All right, well, let's talk Giovanni's apartment, a story that's really stayed with me.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, Sam D'Alessandro, he's not exactly a household name, but definitely a unique voice.
Right. I mean, the story really gets under your skin, you know.
Hmm.
It's about loneliness, desire, that kind of desperate search for escape, but it's also got this really specific mood, this 80s urban noir feel that just sucks you in.
It's the way he writes, for sure. D'Alessandro was part of this literary movement in the 80s called New Narrative, and they were really pushing the boundaries of storytelling, like weaving their own lives into their fiction, blurring the lines between what's real and what's imagined. It's pretty edgy stuff. And tragically, D'Alessandro died really young from AIDS. In 1988, he was only 31.
31, wow. It does make you think about the story differently, knowing it was written against the backdrop of the AIDS crisis. And honestly, the fact that this particular story isn't some well-known piece, it was published in a literary magazine, not exactly something everyone's read, makes it even more intriguing, you know?
Absolutely. We're kind of unearthing a hidden gem here, which is always exciting.
Exactly.
Mm.
So, for those hearing about it for the first time, Giovanni's apartment throws us right into the protagonist's world. And it's not exactly sunshine and roses. Imagine feeling completely adrift, alone in the city, desperate for some kind of connection, something to hold on to. That's where we find our protagonist.
Yeah, and the way D'Alessandro captures this feeling, this urban bleakness, it's palpable. Like you can practically smell the grime on the streets, feel the weight of the city pressing down.
And into this bleakness comes Giovanni, at least at first, through a movie, a classic noir film. And guess who Giovanni plays? A hitman.
Of course he does. It's like the protagonist is already primed to be drawn to this dangerous, mysterious figure.
Totally. He's drawn to the stillness Giovanni projects on screen, this aura of control that he desperately craves.
It speaks volumes about where the protagonist's head is at, right? This yearning for something outside himself, this maybe unhealthy need to escape into something, someone else's world. He's hooked on an image, an ideal, before he even meets the real Giovanni.
Setting himself up for a major reality check. And then, talk about a chance encounter. He literally bumps into Giovanni on the street.
As if scripted by fate itself. This little moment becomes a catalyst, a turning point for the entire story. It's like the universe is forcing him to confront the difference between the fantasy he's built up in his mind and the reality of who Giovanni actually is.
Yeah, and how he chooses to deal with that confrontation.
Yeah.
Well, let's just say it sets the stage for everything that follows.
And the way D'Alessandro captures that initial encounter, the protagonist's desperation for it to mean something, you can really feel the weight of those expectations.
He says about Giovanni, he was the ultimate drug.
Mm.
I mean, that's intense, right?
Oh, absolutely. It goes way beyond just looking for a friend. This is about finding some kind of salvation in another person, and it's a recipe for disaster. And boy, does he ever. He ends up spending over a month, 32 days to be exact, holed up in Giovanni's apartment. Work, friends, the whole outside world just fades away.
Talk about falling down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
It's like he willingly surrenders to this need to escape, to disappear into this relationship with Giovanni. And the apartment itself, it's not just a setting, is it? It becomes this whole other character.
It's true, and it's fascinating how it transforms over the course of the story. Giovanni starts emptying it out, getting rid of furniture, almost like he's stripping it down to the bare essentials.
It's a little unnerving when you think about it. This need to control the environment, to make it stark and empty, what's that all about?
It's one of those details that makes you wonder, right? Part of it seems like a need for control, yeah, but there's also this element of stripping away the unnecessary, getting down to something raw and real. D'Alessandro doesn't spell it out for us, and that's part of what makes it so compelling.
It's like he's giving us these little pieces of the puzzle and letting us figure out how they fit together.
Exactly. And just when you think you're starting to understand the dynamic between them, bam, D'Alessandro introduces Mary, this dwarf who befriends the protagonist, and suddenly we're seeing everything through a whole new lens.
Mary is a trip, isn't she? She just explodes onto the page with this larger-than-life personality, like a breath of fresh air cutting through all the intensity.
She's got this sharp wit, doesn't pull any punches, but you can tell underneath it all she's got a good heart. And she's not afraid to call the protagonist out on his BS, which is something he desperately needs.
She's a reminder of the world outside that bubble he's created with Giovanni. I mean, he's so caught up in this fantasy, it's like he's forgotten how to function in the real world. Remember that part where he's talking about how he just exists on whatever scraps of food Giovanni brings home?
And then there's the detail about the vitamins. Giovanni leaves him a note that just says, "Eat these." And the protagonist takes them without question, day after day. It's kind of creepy when you really think about it.
It's like he's regressed into this childlike state, totally dependent on Giovanni. And it makes you question the whole nature of their relationship, right? Is this genuine connection or just a dangerous codependency?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's not just about their living situation, it plays out in their sexual relationship, too. He describes their encounters in these really intense, almost spiritual terms, talks about them killing and revising each other.
It's like they're trying to erase themselves, to be reborn through this all-consuming connection.
Right, and you have to wonder, is that kind of transformation even possible? Or is it just another form of escape, a temporary fix for a much deeper issue? D'Alessandro definitely doesn't give us easy answers. It's like he's dismantling their world piece by piece. Remember how we were talking about Giovanni emptying out the apartment? Well, it gets even more extreme.
Yeah, it's like watching a slow-motion implosion.
Yeah.
You've got this increasingly bare apartment, this relationship that's starting to feel more and more unstable, and the protagonist just kind of goes along with it.
It's almost like he's given up control completely. He's so deep in this fantasy world with Giovanni that he doesn't even try to fight it.
It's unnerving, but also honestly kind of relatable. That feeling of wanting to escape so badly that you let go of everything, even yourself. And it makes you think about D'Alessandro and the whole new narrative thing again. Like, he's not just telling a story, he's using the story to explore these really raw personal experiences.
Yeah, and you have to remember the context, right? This is the 80s, the AIDS crisis is raging, and here's D'Alessandro writing about desire, loss, this search for connection in the face of so much uncertainty. He's giving a voice to experiences that were often silenced, pushing boundaries in a way that feels really brave, especially for that time.
It's definitely a story that gets under your skin. And just when you think things can't get any weirder, we get to that part with Mary and her mother.
Oh man, that's when everything shifts, right? Mary's forced to confront her own mortality, her mother's mortality, and it throws everything into sharp relief.
It's like a dose of reality crashes into their little bubble. Suddenly the stakes are higher, and the protagonist is faced with a choice.
And the fact that he actually chooses to leave, to go with Mary, it's almost shocking considering how passive he's been up to this point.
It is. It makes you wonder if he's finally starting to wake up, to realize that this escape he's built for himself might not be what he needs after all.
Or maybe he's just trading one kind of dependency for another. That's the thing with D'Alessandro. He doesn't wrap everything up in a neat little bow.
Exactly. He leaves us with that question, that lingering uncertainty. Is the protagonist really changing, or is this just another stop on his quest for escape?
And honestly, isn't that true of life in general? We like to think we have all the answers, but sometimes the best we can do is keep asking questions, keep searching for meaning, even when it feels messy and uncertain.
And sometimes the most profound transformations happen not in grand gestures, but in those quiet moments of self-discovery, those tiny steps we take towards embracing the unknown. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder.